What do you know is true without evidence? What are you certain of, right down to your bones, without proof? Back when I was 10, there was a competition for school kids to write a treatment for an episode of Doctor Who, with the best one being developed into a full episode in the next series, and the winner receiving a writing credit. I was a huge fan of DW at the time, and the competition was actually run through schools, so my teacher made the entire class do it, but I was very excited. I began writing a story about the Doctor landing on a planet full of defective Cybermen, whose programming had gone awry and had been left on this asylum planet to rot. The Doctor lands there in response to a mysterious distress call from a woman, and attempts to find and save her while avoiding the dangerous dysfunctional Cybermen, and the looming threat of planetary destruction at the hands of the normal Cybermen. I finished my short treatment and gave it to my teacher to submit. Unfortunately, turned out the competition was very strict about the formatting of submissions, and mine was returned because I had used the wrong formatting in some way. It seemed like a weird reason. I was a bit disappointed, and that was the end of that. But then, a year or two later, there was an episode of DW called Asylum of the Daleks, which seemed incredibly similar to my story except with Daleks. So incredibly, eerily similar in fact, that to this day I am absolutely convinced that Stephen Moffat saw my script and came up with a formatting excuse so that he could remove me from the competition, steal my story, change the bad guys and claim it as his own. I have zero evidence. I don't even still have the treatment I wrote, or any letter from the BBC about my submission, and yet I know in my bones that Stephen Moffat stole his script from 10-year-old me. Back when I was 18, I got my first tattoo, the Squaresoft logo on my upper arm. It was 2001 and I was also on my own in a new state. I was and still am a huge RPG fan, and it's the height of my geekdom. Well, I sent in a picture of me and my tattoo with a short letter about me and my favorite games to Offic EL PlayStation magazine. They published my letter and photo along with the caption, "We don't know whether to be impressed or frightened." The very next month they started a tattoo of the month section, and I'm absolutely sure 100% that I either started that or was the story that proved the concept, the test. Unless someone can come from that team's time and tell me I'm not, I'll always believe I was the start of that. The courts and the Florida Department of Children and Families released a statement after a 3-year investigation basically saying that Casey was responsible for the deaths of Kaylee, either directly see the theory proposed by the prosecution that Casey wanted freedom and chloroformed and duct taped Kaylee, or indirectly by not protecting her from harm, see the theory proposed by the defense that she drowned. Essentially, they don't need to look for the real killer because Casey is the real killer. Edit. Also, always important to remember that a not guilty verdict doesn't signal that the person is actually innocent. It only means that they could not be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. In this case, it seems like the conviction hung on the ability to determine a cause of death, which was not able to be done, and so with the evidence presented at trial, the jury could not find Casey guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the crimes that the prosecution was alleging. When I was in 10th grade, I came down with one hell of a sickness. Not like any regular cough and sore throat sickness. I'm talking like 100 for fever. Hard to see. Could not even put myself into the reality that I was awake type of sickness. I remember being in school. I was a perfect attendance kid and being pulled out of class to talk with my sister who lives across the state. But I know that couldn't have happened, and I think I was just having fever dreams while awake. My point is, after this I never got sick, ever. I threw up once in my 20s from drinking too much the night before, but I've never had a fever or anything of the sort since. The most I've gotten was a sore throat from allergies. It's been over 15 years and I still haven't gotten sick. I watched Flight 93 go down. I would never share that in real life because it's fucking grin, and no one would believe you. The geography of the reports are off. I saw it clear as day from Kent State's main campus, Ohio. I didn't know what I was seeing other than I remember thinking that plane is way too low. We had an aviation college, so planes were common and too big and it's jerking around, like how a toddler drives a Power Wheels truck. Continued on to class. You don't want to be late even at a liberal college. I'm quietly convinced I made a best-selling mystery novelist change the way he writes, because I criticized him on Reddit. The novelist in question is Chris Carter. The books are the Robert Hunter series. Yes, The guy who has built a career on looking for serial killers is named Hunter. He works for the LAPD's ultra-violent crime unit. It's not a series that's overburdened by subtlety, is what I'm saying. They are as schlocky a bunch of thrillers as you could ever hope to find. But for some reason, I can't get enough of them, despite the fact that they're very much not great. They lean pretty damn heavy on ridiculous tropes. And I've never seen a more Mary Sue lead than I have in this series. But the biggest complaint I have with them is that the same line appears almost literally word for word in the first 9 books. I made a comment about it on Reddit on an books thread about your favorite terrible authors, and I went back through all of the books published so far just to prove my point. The Crucifix Killer. The famous line doesn't actually appear in this book as far as I could find. That Hunter does drink scotch near constantly is the defining trait of his character. Across the room, a stylish glass bar looked totally out of place. It was the only piece of furniture Hunter had purchased brand new and from a trendy shop. It held several bottles of Hunter's biggest passion single malt Scotch whiskey. The bottles were arranged in a peculiar way that only he understood. And so it begins. The Executioner. Single malt Scotch whiskey was Hunter's biggest passion, but unlike most people, he knew how to appreciate it instead of simply getting drunk on it. Note that in this one and the next, Carter doesn't even use the Scottish spelling whiskey, rather than whiskey, despite the fact that this is literally Hunter's only character trait. The Night Stalker. Hunter's biggest passion was single malt Scotch whiskey, but unlike most, he knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality instead of simply getting drunk on it. The Death Sculptor. Hunter sat at the bar and ordered a double dose of 12-year-old Glendronach with 2 cubes of ice. Single malt Scotch whiskey was his biggest passion, and though he had overdone it a few times, he knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality instead of simply getting drunk on it. The Hunter. Hunter's father had a passion for single malt Scotch whiskey, a passion that, frankly, Hunter had never understood. He found whiskey, any type of whiskey, way too overwhelming for his palate. I actually quite like this one. It's a prequel novella, so this one is a nice little meta throwback. It gets a pass from me. 1 by 1. Hunter would never consider himself an expert, but he knew how to appreciate the flavor and robustness of single malts, instead of simply getting hammered on them. Though, sometimes, getting hammered worked just fine. This is also the first appearance of the "but sometimes getting drunk works just fine, am I right?" addendum. It's nice to see Carter branching out a little, but after this he never looks back. An Evil Mind. Single malt Scotch whiskey was Hunter's biggest passion. Unlike so many, he knew how to appreciate its palate instead of just getting drunk on it. Though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine. I Am Death. Back in the living room, wrapped in a white towel, Hunter switched on a floor lamp and dimmed its intensity to medium. That done, he approached his drinks cabinet, which was small, but held an impressive collection of single malt Scotch whiskey, which was probably his biggest passion. Though he had overdone it a few times, Hunter sure knew how to appreciate the flavor and quality of a good single malt, instead of simply getting drunk on it. The color. Hunter's biggest passion was single malt Scotch whiskey. Back in his apartment, tucked in a corner of his living room, an old-fashioned drinks cabinet held a small, but impressive collection of single malts that would probably satisfy the palate of most connoisseurs. Hunter would never consider himself an expert on whiskey, but, unlike so many, he at least knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality, instead of simply getting drunk on it. Though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine. The caller also gets double points for helpfully informing us that women just don't get the subtle nuances of Scotch. Hunter tried not to frown at her again, but he was sincerely intrigued. Women in general weren't very fond of Scotch whiskey, which wasn't at all surprising. Whiskey was undoubtedly an acquired taste, one that at first would certainly overpower anyone's palate and knock the air out of their lungs. In the process, Hunter knew that only too well. The trick was to persist, to keep trying, to keep sipping it, until one day finally made sense. Women usually weren't that patient with drinks. They either liked it at first sip or they didn't. This, by the by, is how we know that the woman in question is trustworthy. Because reasons. Gallery of the Dead. Back in his apartment, Hunter had a small, but impressive collection of Scotch that would probably satisfy the palate of most connoisseurs. He would never consider himself an expert, but unlike so many of his friends, who also claimed to enjoy single malt Scotch whiskey, he knew how to appreciate the flavors and robustness of the malts, instead of simply getting drunk on them. Though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine, That post was made in January of 2019. In April, his book Hunting Evil came out, and the line was nowhere to be seen. I didn't think much of it until his new book, Written in Blood, came out a few days ago, and also didn't have the line in it. This comment is also one of the top answers if you Google his name and the book series via Reddit. Exactly what you'd do if you were looking to see if people on the internet were talking about your books. I also can't find any evidence of anyone else pointing this out in a review or such like. So yeah, in short, 3 months after I made that comment, he broke the habit of a decade of writing and finally decided that after 9 stories that use this as a crutch for Hunter's personality, it was too much. I know you're reading this, Chris. I know. Ocean creatures tend to stay in their zone of water pressure, because that's what their bodies have adapted to. Some have more range than others. Ever seen a blobfish? Ever seen what a blobfish supposed to look like at the depth it's supposed to live at? It gets all fucked up when it gets brought to the surface because of the water pressure differential. See also, giant squids. One of the only reasons we know they exist is because they die and float up here, or are very close to death and can't maintain proper buoyancy. They don't want to be up here. They prefer the crushing blackness. That dragon is kinda brainwashing Daenerys in A Song of Ice and Fire, a Game of Thrones. He keeps giving her dreams, and convinced her to burn the masters at a staper and take the Unsullied with fire and blood. The other dragons are freaking put during the scene, but he's perfectly calm. He was also staring her down the night before when she woke from her dream. The Valyrian Empire was built for the dragons. The dragons told the men what to do, empowered them with wisdom and magic, and built an empire of flame and lava and obsidian. And the eggs begged the Targaryens to hatch them. It's why they had their dragon dreams. It's why so many Targaryens looked to be reborn as a dragon and were driven mad. Aerion Brightflame thought he was a dragon trapped inside a man, and died drinking wildfire. Ares the Mad King wanted to burn them all and be reborn as a dragon. Daelor the Blessed would pray over his dragon egg to make it hatch. They heard a dragon's voice reaching into their thoughts, and some mistook them for their own thoughts. Dany had a miscarriage, but wakes to only think of her eggs, and is found crawling toward them. And all of this can be explained logically, but I know in my bones that there's more going on here. I believe I am responsible for Alex Rodriguez turning around his horrible season in 2009. Yes, I know that many sports fans think they can influence a player or team, but I really did it. Folks, allow me to explain. Like many Yankees fans, I was frustrated with Eerie. He was always a bit of a dick, and he choked in high-pressure situations. It seemed he only get the big play, and the Yankees were already clinched to win a game, but never when we really needed that hit. So, Eerie started off the season abysmally. By the time the Yankees came to Atlanta, his average was at 213. You see, I live in Atlanta, so I bought the whole series. It's only 1 out of every 6 years that my boys visit Atlanta, so I get the series every time they do. Another thing is Yankees fans are really good at taking over stadiums, and the Braves are a fair-weather team. So we were able to chant and cheer, and basically drown out the Braves fans. We even were able to Yankee roll call games 2 and 3. I'm sure you guys think that's super disrespectful, but whatever. Go Yanks. So we lose game 1 and Eerie goes 0 for 4. He gets booed a few times because we're getting fed up with this. Game to Joba gives up AHR to Frenchie in the 5th and we're losing 1-0. Triveli ties it in the 6th, and then Jeter and Damon get on base. Eerie is up and we need a clutch hit, but Eerie never gets a clutch hit. People were already starting to boo him. So I made a decision. If I can get him to be cheered on the road, maybe it'll fire a spark can get him out of this slump. So I start going crazy with Let's Go, Eerie. Clap, 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 clap. It picks up steam. The Yankee boos start to quiet and Yankee fans around me pick up my chant. After all, we need a clutch hit, so why not? It spreads as Eerie's at bat continues. Within about a minute, Turner Field is booming with an Eerie chant. I think it's the first one I've heard in months, and it's while they're playing on the road. Eerie crushes a liner to deep center and drives in both runs. Hell yeah. I still don't like you, Eerie. But attaboy. We end up winning 8-4. So game 3. And I decided I'm chanting Eerie all game. It's my personal goal to get him out of this slump, so every at bat, let's go. Eerie. Clap, 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 clap. First inning, he hits a 2-run homer. We all erupt. Second inning, the chant is louder, and he drives in Jeets with a single. 4th inning, we're even louder and he reach on an error. 5th inning, Arid walks. 7th inning, he drives in Jeets and Damon with a single. And finally he strikes out in the 8th. But all in all, Arid went 3 for 5 with 4 RBIs. And he had Yankee fan support the entire game. Support that I hadn't seen in months. Arid went on to play the Mets and have solid outings. Steadily his batting average went up though from the 213 it was. He arrived in Atlanta to 286 by the end of the regular season. Then he absolutely crushed it during the postseason. So, yeah, I contributed to that. I know players can get hyped by the fans, so I figured I'd show him some support because even though I didn't particularly like him, we needed his bat to perform. I've actually changed my mind on him since he's retired. As a commentator now, he's actually really likable, and he clearly knows his shit. So, Arid, you're good folk.